And now, aviation weather around Alaska.
Flying weather for Sunday morning. Some pretty good VFR here in the interior. Marginal VFR up here, Koyukuk Valley into the western Yukon Flats. And from the Brooks Range out to the Arctic coast, a lot of marginal VFR over the Bering Sea that extends inland here across the Yukon Kuskokwim Delta, Bristol Bay to Kodiak Island, southern Cook Inlet, and eastern Aleutians, Alaska Peninsula. Pretty marginal. Band of IFR here across the Gulf of Alaska there and along the eastern North Gulf coast. Marginal VFR for the southeast coast. For the afternoon, just some IFR possible down there around Prince of Wales Island and Dixon Entrance. Otherwise, marginal VFR northward there to Lynn Canal Glacier Bay, North Gulf Coast, and across the Copper River Basin. And also from the north slope to the Arctic coast, pretty marginal conditions there, even into the Brooks Range. And most of the west-southwest interior covered marginal VFR out here, as well as most of the Bering Sea, marginal VFR, Pribilof Islands, all of the Aleutians, with this area of IFR staying just to the south of Adak and Atka. Then for the next day, big storm pushing up here toward the Aleutians, pushes IFR here from about Atka eastward across the Alaska Peninsula, and out ahead of that system, good VFR over the interior with marginal VFR, Seward Peninsula there across St. Lawrence Island, and also for the Brooks Range to the Arctic coast. And then marginal VFR there from just north of the eastern Alaska Range down into the Gulf of Alaska. Kenai Peninsula for the most part there, Cook Inlet VFR, and marginal for the Gulf and northern half of the Panhandle VFR. And for the afternoon, improving conditions here for the southeast coast, mostly marginal VFR in the afternoon. Good marginal, mostly VFR through the day. And here for the southern Alaska area, we've got VFR as well with lingering marginal VFR along the Alaska Range. Otherwise, some IFR up here over the north slope out to portions of the eastern Arctic coast. And then with this big storm out over the southern Bering Sea here, we've got IFR, of course, all across the Alaska Peninsula, pushing up in toward Togiak Bay, Cape Newnham area, and the southwest mountains there, with a zone of IFR extending westward to the central Aleutians. Passes for tomorrow for the Brooks Range, Anatuvik and Adigan both look marginal at times throughout the day. Sunday, Lake Clark and Merrill, same forecast, pretty marginal conditions for the western Alaska Range there, rainy included, but VFR for Windy, VFR for Isabel, and then back to marginal VFR for Mentasta, and marginal VFR also in the forecast for Tanita, Portage, as well as Chilkoot and White. From there, looking at the freezing levels, 2,000 feet here up along the North Gulf Coast, Kenai Peninsula area, eastward there, across the northern Panhandle, but south of Kodiak Island, the Alaska Peninsula, and the Aleutians. As far as icing goes, nothing significant out here over the Bering Sea and the Aleutians. Best chance for some isolated moderate icing here from the Yukon River down across the Kuskokwim Valley and Cook Inlet, Kenai Peninsula, North Gulf Coast, and then all of the southeast coast. And from there, going to the jet stream, got westerly winds about 125 knots there, cutting across the northern or north central Panhandle area. Pretty light though, all of the mainland north of the jet, and even the Aleutians, mostly north of the jet stream here, but we've got some stronger winds here cutting across just to the south of the eastern Aleutians. And from there, going on down to 9,000 feet, again, light winds over interior Alaska. Light winds also for the Bering Sea and much of the Aleutians. Maybe some 40-knot winds trying to get up here into the east central Aleutian areas, but westerlies of 40 knots there across Bristol Bay, Kodiak Island, into the Gulf of Alaska, turning southwest at about 35 knots or so into the southeast coast. And for 3,000 feet, light winds for the Panhandle, west-southwest 30 knots there just south of Prince William Sound, and 25-knot west-northwesterlies across the Alaska Peninsula with this weak low there over the Susitna Valley. Stronger winds, though, for the Arctic coast and at least the northern portions of the North Slope east or east-northeast, 40 to 45 knots up in that area. Bering Sea, pretty light winds. Aleutians also looking pretty good. Turbulence-wise, most significant turbulence will be up here along the western Brooks Range from about Point Lay down to Cape Lisburne and Point Hope. Could be some considerable moderate turbulence up in that area. Otherwise, light to isolated moderate for the remainder of the Arctic coast, and extending down through the Bering Strait to maybe the western portion of St. Lawrence Island, around Gamble there. And also maybe some light to isolated moderate turbulence there for especially for smaller aircraft here for the Kamchatka Bay area, Barren Islands, and maybe on up toward Cordova or so there, as well as the Alaska Peninsula.